Hello everyone and welcome back to the Down to the Wire podcast, episode 8, last one of 2020. I'm here with Jack Freeman. How are you, Jack?
I am great.
And we also have a guest today, don't we, Jack?
We do.
We have a guest. Josh, how are you?
I'm okay, thanks. Yeah, no, I'm
welcome.
I'm good.
Welcome to the Down to the Wire podcast.
Good to be here.
And so we're going to be talking about the football and the NFL mainly, because there's been a lot happening in both of those sports this week, and hopefully with a third person we'll get a bit more input on those. Just so we can iron this out straight away, you are a Liverpool fan, football-wise?
I am, yeah.
Josh?
I'm outnumbered now, I'm 2-1.
Yes. Well, and this is the funny thing. So in terms of NFL, Josh, who do you support?
I am a Chiefs fan.
So we've got a sports podcast that contains 3 Kansas City Chiefs fans. This is going to be lovely and impartial. There we are.
Winners.
That's just how it is. It's because we're knowledgeable, see. We know that they're the best team to support. There we are.
And the fact that I'm a Chiefs fan is purely down to you two anyway. So, yeah, contrary to what many people think, it wasn't a pure, glory supporting episode. I was a fan of the Chiefs a little bit before they were very, very, very good. So.
Okay. There we are. Right. So, Josh, have you got a highlight of the week?
Highlight of the week.
If not, we can start with me and Jack first whilst you think of one.
Yeah, go on.
Okay, well, I'll go first then. So, the Steelers versus the Colts was my highlight of the week, because the Colts built up a nice big lead, and then the Steelers came back into it, basically.
Oh, it was a great one, because the Steelers, it was kind of one of those, there has to be a turning point, because they were so good, and then they went so bad, and this was almost that knife-edge moment where they kind of deciding, are we a good team or a bad team? Are we going to bottle it, or are we going to succeed?
Well,
and
they were
chose to succeed.
Am I right in saying they were 11-0, weren't they? And then
11-0. Then they went 0-3 for the last 3.
Yeah, so this would have been 0-4 basically.
Yeah, which if they had lost as well would have meant they go into week 17, the last week of the season, against the Browns, and it's a winner-take-all for the AFC North title. But they did win, and they win the North.
There we are. Jack, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. My highlight of the week was Big Sam Allardyced. Big Sam Allardyced, back of a plum, and he comes out and he gets a stranglehold of Liverpool in his first game and takes 2 points away from them.
Do you know what? Stranglehold is a very good way to describe it. That's a very good way to describe it.
He was not playing that game to win. He was playing that game to frustrate and grind Liverpool down and then just steal something at the last.
Yeah.
Which
there we are. We'll talk.
Allardyce has done to Liverpool before. Actually, Allardyce has done to Klopp.
He was the last team to beat you at Anfield, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was actually. Ben Take scored. It was Crystal Palace 3, Liverpool 1, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah. Or was it 3-2? I can't remember.
Might have been 3-2, but it was definitely.
I just remember it was in the Premier League charge before, wasn't it?
Yeah.
We are. I do have a highlight of the week.
Go on then.
I have to think about it, but I think my highlight of the week would be Arsenal beating Chelsea. For a number of reasons. Number one, I am a lookalike of Mikel Arteta, so I like any win he gets. And secondly, not because I particularly enjoy Chelsea losing more than I enjoy any of the other top teams losing, but I think for pure shock value. Although I guess that should be a shock of the week, really, shouldn't it? But yeah,
bit of both. It's a highlight because Chelsea are losing again.
Yeah, there we are. So yeah, we'll talk a bit more about the football as we go on anyway. Because like you said, that Arsenal Chelsea game was a bit of a random one, and like you said, the Big Sam suffocated Liverpool a little bit. It was also a bit of an interesting one. But there we are. So we'll start off with football then. So Lionel Messi. There was a bit of a saga about him in the summer. I'm pretty sure we discussed this before, Jack, didn't we? About Lionel Messi? I'm sure we mentioned something. But yeah, Messi, as of the 1st of January, which is what now, 3 days? 3 days' time? Well,
4 days. Yeah.
Yes, 4 days. He can start negotiating with the clubs.
Other clubs that aren't Spanish, crucially.
Yes.
I don't know why he'd moved to a different Spanish club.
He's not going to Madrid then.
no, that's not happening.
So what are people thinking in terms of what do you think might happen?
It'd be interesting to see if he joins Pep again. Sort of joins City and makes... Like, in a sense, they've been wanting to win the Champions League for quite a while, and Messi kind of is Pep Guardiola in a nutshell, so it'd be interesting to see if he goes there and perhaps makes a super team with him.
I mean, that would be annoying for... I mean, as a Liverpool fan, that would be a little bit annoying for Liverpool fans. For Man City to have one of the greatest players in history, that would be a little bit rough.
Yeah, I can't see that being ideal for you.
I think that the most likely is... I think it's impossible to predict, but I do think that perhaps one of the most likely scenarios is him joining Pep at City. Just for a couple of reasons. I can't imagine Pep not wanting him or not trying to convince the board that it's a worthwhile signing.
No.
Equally, again, it's impossible to predict how the rest of the Premier League season plays out. The City aren't lighting up the Premier League. Nobody's really lighting up the Premier League. I think you've got all of the top 6 or 7 teams dropping points. I think, unlike the last few years, it's going to be a bit of an exercise in which team can drop the least points, I think, is which team doesn't, slips up the least. But I think if it continues as it is, and City... I can't see City not getting top 4, but equally I can see City finishing 4th. And if City finish 4th, I think it's more justifiable going out and getting Messi, even though he'll be, on a free, his wages will be ridiculous. But I think that's more easily justifiable if City haven't, romped to a league title or won a couple of trophies. I think they might go ahead and do it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is as well, City generally tend to... They like the kind of marquee sign-in vibe, don't they? And as in, I feel like as soon as you get Lionel Messi, that's like the ultimate marketing tool for a football team. It's as simple as that. Barcelona have been doing it for years. So both from a footballing perspective and from a money perspective as well. As in, like you said, the wages he would demand would probably be obscene, but can you imagine how much money they'll make in football shirt sales just from having Messi?
Yeah. United did that with Ibrahimovic, didn't they? He basically paid for the signing of Paul Pogba just on shirt sales alone, which is pretty incredible. Yeah. But speaking of contract, he's going to ask for a lot of money. Do you think he'd take a cut price deal and join Ronaldo at Juve? Because, I mean, they were looking to offload Ronaldo because they were like, they can't afford him, probably in part due to the pandemic. But do you think potentially he goes, I got enough cash, let's join forces with the second greatest player of all time and make an all-star team almost?
Well, I mean, I feel like if his wages are going to be significantly lower than Ronaldo's, I don't think he would join, to be honest. Just purely from an ego perspective. I think if it was generally like Ronaldo's wages were lower and he was like, all right, I'll accept lower wage, then maybe. But I don't think it's so much.
He's got a bit of pride about not being.
Yeah, I think so. I think they both do. Like if it were the other way around, I think Ronaldo would be exactly the same. I don't think that's just a Messi thing. But I mean, I think to be honest with you, I think out of all the potential options, I think that would probably be the most unlikely, just purely from the point of view of. Like you said, there's been rumours that they can't afford just Ronaldo. So, are they then going to be able to go and afford Mr. Messi on top?
Yeah, that should be a strange one. Well, going on the sort of the complete flip of that, do you reckon he'll ramp up his wages and say, yeah, I'll go to PSG, join forces with Neymar, and sort of literally part of a super team which is paying Mbappe, Neymar, and him, hopefully, imagine.
I mean, the thing with PSG is as well, I don't know whether other people... There seems to be a lot of player power at PSG, doesn't there? And I feel like Messi fits that kind of... as in there've been rumours for a while, haven't they, that kind of he's been running the Barcelona dressing room to almost like managing them himself, especially when... is it Kike Sanchez? Is that his name? I can't remember what his name was. The guy who got sacked after being absolutely obliterated by Bayern Munich. So... And I think, obviously, Pochettino potentially coming in as...
just sacked Tuchel. Do you reckon they sacked Tuchel with this in mind? Potentially going, well, Pochettino plays a brand of football that's a little bit more akin to what Messi likes. Maybe
I mean,
Tuchel doesn't.
I mean, I don't know. To be honest with you, I think Tuchel has just generally underperformed, really, with the resources he's got.
Yeah, 5 losses this season, I think.
Really?
Last
Wow.
time I checked, yeah. But they're still only 2 points off top. But
yeah, I guess. What are your thoughts on that, Josh? Would you see Messi at PSG?
I think it's slightly more likely than seeing him at Juve.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't think it's as likely as seeing him at City, but it's one of those. It wouldn't. If it happened, I'd still be very surprised. But I think it's more likely than him going somewhere like Juve. The other thing is as well, of course, he seems to be fairly open to a move to the US at some point, doesn't he?
Well, I'm sure I read something recently that said he'd like to move to the US. I'm sure I read something.
Yeah, I saw it this week. I'm pretty sure I saw it today on BBC, but I had seen it previously as well. Do you reckon that's actually a realistic prospect, though? Not just you can say it. I mean, you got to admit that if you go into the US, you're sort of saying, I'm ready to retire, but I don't feel like he's ready to retire.
I don't think he's there yet. I think being open to a move to the US doesn't necessarily mean that would be his pick at this point in time. I think Look, Messi is a completely different type of footballer from Ronaldo, isn't he? Ronaldo is an athlete, and he's a fantastic athlete. Messi is a very gifted football technician. For different reasons, I think both of them have got a very, very long shelf life as a footballer. And I do think that, whilst Messi isn't the athlete that Ronaldo is, I do think that he's got, at least 2 more years at a top club if he wants them. Does that mean that he'll be exactly the same Messi as he was, 7 or 8 years ago? No, not necessarily. But I still think that he could afford a bit of a drop off, and he'd still be, walking his way into most top teams, wouldn't he? So,
and this is the thing as well. I guess this is kind of slightly going back to what I said, but as in for a team like Man City, it's as much about the financial and business and brand aspect as it is for the footballing side. Because, just think of the funds that Man City could raise purely by having Messi, say, for 2 seasons. That sets them up for another couple of transfer windows then, almost.
Yeah.
It also depends on keeping Pep.
Yes. That's true. No, that's true. I think, to be honest with you, if Messi were to go to the US now, I would foresee him doing a Zlatan and just like going to the US and being like, actually, I'm a little bit too good for you right now, and then coming back to Europe. I guess we'll have to wait and see.
We mentioned him joining forces with Neymar at PSG. Do you think he potentially waited out to the summer and joined Suarez at Atletico? Because you see a lot of big players, when they feel a little bit unloved by the club that they've been at for so long, they'll sort of join the rival just to kick them in the teeth almost to say, yeah, you guys haven't treated me very well. I mean, Cruyff did it when he moved from Ajax to Feyenoord, I think. And
right.
I'm sure there's 1 or 2 more situations where that sort of... I mean, you find Zlatan went to AC and then back, a few times. There's a few players who do that. Do you reckon he could be tempted to stick it out and wait? Because him and Suarez had a good link.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I think the biggest snagging point on that potential move would be the type of football that Atletico play. As in the way that... And I guess that's why... This is another reason why I think out of all of them, it would most likely be City. When you think of the way that Barcelona have played in the last... Well, ever since Messi's been there, it's kind of this intricate technical football, isn't it? Passing football, whereas, let's be fair, Atletico Madrid is very kind of defensive... solid hit on the break kind of football, and that's not to say it's not effective, but as in for Lionel Messi, it's just But having said that, I read I'm pretty sure this would be fairly hot off the press. I read something that they reckon Diego Costa has asked for his contract to be terminated early.
Yeah, I hear that.
So that's probably because they've got Suarez.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. I mean, let's be fair, Suarez or Diego Costa, I don't think there's much contest there, is there?
I tell you what. Diego Costa going back to a team like Chelsea would be funky.
Oh, flipping heck. No, thank you.
And back to
Sorry,
Messi,
go on, Josh, go on.
Back to Messi and Atletico Madrid, though, I think both Ronaldo and Messi, when you've broken the number of records that they've broken over the period that they have, surely part of them is thinking of their own individual legacy, I guess, for want of a better word. And when you think of the criticisms that are levelled against Messi, surely the biggest two are, one, that he hasn't led Argentina to a major international trophy.
Yeah.
And, And two...
Which Ronaldo has.
And two, he's only ever done it in Spain for Barcelona. So
And Ronaldo's done it elsewhere. So,
so
that's
surely,
a good point.
why not kill... if he wants out from Barca, which clearly he's not happy there, why not take the opportunity to go, to another league? I know...
Yeah,
Premier League,
prove it that he can do it on a Monday night in Stoke.
Yeah.
He should rejoin Stoke. Or not rejoin, join Stoke. And go on a championship charge.
Flipping heck.
Or are they League One now? I don't actually know.
No idea.
But yeah,
No idea.
Exactly. And you think of, I've lost count of the number of times that I've heard people, especially in this country, but would Messi be as good in the Premier League? I mean, why not move to City? Why not take the chance to, quash that, like little voice that people have always got against him? Or the very least another league. Like you say, you go to PSG and you'll probably win, you assume that he'll win a good few trophies there in a couple of years. Probably win
Maybe even Champions League.
Yeah.
The only league that's more of a farmers' league than the Spanish league is the French league. So I don't know if he'd be proving anyone wrong by going to France. So.
Well, I mean, the thing is, though, is in like it would be a very similar move for me. It would be a similar move to when Ronaldo went to Juve, as in a team that dominates generally domestically, but is craving a Champions League.
Yeah.
Absolutely craving it. And same for City. City is slightly different because they've won the Premier League multiple times. And let's be fair, that winning the Premier League is a bit more of a statement than winning Ligue 1 or Serie A. But as in, City, for PSG and City, the big one is the Champions League. And who better than Lionel Messi to take you there? But yeah, there we are. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Messi. And to be honest with you, it'll be interesting to see... Yeah, it'll be interesting to see whether they negotiate. I would think they'd be fairly prompt with it because he was so unhappy, in the summer, wouldn't he, when it all kind of went a bit sour. So yeah, we'll see what happens. Another player who obviously not quite as globally watched perhaps as Lionel Messi is Liverpool's Gini Wijnaldum. I'm pretty sure he can negotiate from January, I'd imagine, because his contract runs out... in the summer. So you'd think that he would have some sort of clause to allow him to start negotiating. What are people's thoughts on that? I mean, I guess me and Josh would probably have more thoughts as a Liverpool fan. Jack, do you have any thoughts?
Do you think he's good enough to go anywhere better than Liverpool?
Well, the real question is there anyone better than Liverpool? I'm not sure.
Assuming he ditches the Premier League, I'm assuming... Well, I'm not saying maybe better, but a different pasture and new. Teams like Juventus, Real Madrid, Barca, PSG, Atletico. Do you think any of those would want him, firstly? I mean, maybe Atletico. I feel like he does play that little bit of a rugged, running everywhere.
Yeah.
Can I come in
Go
here?
on, Josh, go on. Yes.
Yes, you can.
Yeah, I think the simple answer is yes. Like, I think, you can't believe every rumour that you hear, but you go back to the summer... And Liverpool were, caught in Thiago, weren't they? And Wijnaldum was linked in quite a big way to Barcelona. And there was a lot of talk that Ronald Koeman wanted exactly that type of player in his midfield. So, yeah, and especially when you look at, PSG just played the Champions League final back in, July, didn't they, against Bayern Munich. And they're playing Paredes in their midfield. And to be honest, he's not an overly creative player. He's a bit of a midfield enforcer. I think Wijnaldum does his job and a little bit more probably. So
yeah, I agree.
Listen, like Wijnaldum is a fantastic player. When last summer Liverpool were being linked every day with Thiago for 25 million, Thiago for this price. There was a period of about a month where the general reports coming out were that Liverpool would sign Thiago if they let Wijnaldum go, or failed to renew his contract, or didn't renew his contract. That it was a kind of trade-off between the two. And I remember chatting to you at the time, Jack, and I just remember saying, as much as I love Wijnaldum as a player, there is absolutely no contest between Wijnaldum or Thiago.
Excuse me. Yeah, I agree.
And I stand by that. Like, Thiago is ridiculously good. Like, Thiago walks into any midfield in the world, and I challenge. I would challenge anybody to name a club side who wouldn't put Thiago straight into their team. He's that good. However, whilst Wijnaldum isn't on the same level as Thiago as a player, I think this season more than any other, you've really seen his worth, because
he's been really good this year.
Yeah, and in a season where, off the back of the the lockdown and the pandemic slowing down fixtures, fixtures are so tightly packed this season, and you're seeing a lot of players, with muscle injuries, a lot of fatigue, a lot. You've got Klopp banging on about we need more subs, and you got managers rotate inside. Like, I think what Wijnaldum has shown is how kind of resilient and how I can't think of the word, how resilient he is, and how kind of dependable he is in that sense. As in, like, he doesn't pick up muscle strains. Like, he's incredibly fit, and at a time where, through no fault of his own, like Thiago's been injured now since the first few weeks of September, and that's nothing to do with Thiago's injury tolerance. It's come from a shocking tackle from Richarlison. But we signed Thiago in the summer, and the whole debate was, Thiago or Wijnaldum. The fact is, it's been Wijnaldum for 3 months now, and he's done very, very well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I even though back in the summer, I would have been one of the voices who'd said, like, for the sake of getting Thiago, I'd let just about any midfielder in the world go to get Thiago in my team. I think it would be a real shame if Liverpool didn't renew his contract.
I agree. But then this is interesting because again, I don't know what your thoughts are on this, Jack. Again, as a United fan, but as in from a totally neutral perspective, as in you've got Wijnaldum, so it seems to be the reason that he's not signed the new contract is he's not happy with the wages that Liverpool are offering, which is fair enough as a player. You've got to consider the financial side from your own perspective. It sounds like from what I've read that Wijnaldum wants a sort of like 3 or 4 year contract.
Those are tough to get when you're pushing.
Well, this is the thing. Wijnaldum's 30, so as in they could say that. I don't know what the figure would be, but say it's around 200,000. You'd assume it would be in that vicinity, right? Because at the end of the day, where Liverpool are, they've just won the league. They won the Champions League the season before. As in, it would be a fairly high fee. In 4 years' time, can you really justify paying that for a 34-year-old Gini Wijnaldum, who, albeit, will probably still be very fit, because that's the type of player he is? But
it's smart of what Wijnaldum's doing. He's looking out for the future. There's no point in, like, you're not signing a contract. There's no point in doing a 1 year contract and another 1 year contract, because that's what you end up doing in the NFL. This is a little bit more pernickety because they've got a salary cap for each team, but players who have just had a good season, there's no guarantee of that they're going to be good or healthy in 2 years' time. So what do? They go out and they sign a 4 year contract at a reduced amount, but still a very decent amount that if he was to get injured, say in 3 years' time, they're at least getting paid for a fourth for no fee. And that's the thing, the older you get, the more injury prone usually you should get. So it's smart from Wijnaldum's side of things. And to be fair, he probably has a lot of suitors who look at him thinking,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we'll have him.
He's not going to be short of options, I wouldn't think, Wijnaldum. I mean, sorry, Josh.
Having said that about his age, I do think that because of how kind of injury tolerant and because of how resilient he seems to be, I would say he's quite a young 30-year-old in football terms.
Yeah.
So, whilst you can't depend on that staying exactly the same until he's 34,
no.
If it is that he wants higher pay than he's getting, and I don't know exactly what he is being paid at Liverpool.
No.
And I don't know how that compares with Liverpool's other midfielders. I do think that Wijnaldum is one of those players who's got a bit of credit in the bank. Like, I think he's achieved a lot for Liverpool. And when you think of kind of crucial goals he's popped up with, it's like my mind's automatically going back to the Champions League semi a couple of years back, where he comes on at half time and bangs 2 goals in 5 minutes against Barcelona. He's got a couple of crucial goals against Man City. Okay, he's not prolific, but he pops up with a crucial goal here and there. Yeah, I think from that point of view, from a negotiating stance, I think he's got a little bit of reasoning for wanting to be paid as one of Liverpool's top midfielders.
I don't think he's being unreasonable in what he's requested. In all honesty, when you consider, like you said, he's playing week in, week out, particularly this season. And as in there are times where you think, oh, come on, Wijnaldum, he can be a little bit frustrating, but this season I would say he's been probably one of our best players.
Yeah.
Maybe combined with Jota, but Jota's got injured. So
yeah, and one of our most consistent, easily one of our most consistent. Like you say, he's not creative like Thiago is, and there are times where that is frustrating. And there have been matches like the West Brom match that you're looking at and thinking, oh god, if Thiago's on the pitch, like you just wonder whether we're a little bit more creative. We're going to unpick a really tough defence, but just because of his consistency, his dependability. And just because of the shifts he puts in week on week, I think he's well worth it. And the last thing I'd say, whilst he might not remain as injury tolerant as he always has been up until the age of 34, I'd argue that at 30 years old, he's infinitely more useful to Liverpool than someone like Naby Keita. And
yeah,
that's not me picking on Naby Keita. I think Naby Keita's a talented footballer, but he's like the polar opposite, isn't he? He's talented. He's still got his best years well in front of him. But I think there's a big if there, and I think the big if is if he can start getting a little bit of, consistent
fitness.
Game time. If he can start shaking off ongoing injury, and I think Keita is what 25 now, 26.
I think so. Yeah,
25. I think. Well, Wijnaldum at 30.
That's not that far behind, yeah.
Wijnaldum at 30, I'd argue in all likelihood, Wijnaldum at 32, 33 is going to give you more on a consistent basis than Naby Keita is. So I think Liverpool, if there is the scope to up his wages, not that you just give in to player demands blindly, but
no.
If I'm Michael Edwards or Jurgen Klopp, I'm thinking, gosh, I'm going to do anything I can to keep him.
Yeah,
but
there we are.
I did just have a look. He's being paid 90 grand a week at the moment. That's not a lot for a player of his quality. So maybe an element of it is I need to get a decent pay packet at some point. Otherwise, it's going to pass me by. And
that's
obviously, 90k is not a small amount of money.
Well,
but in footballing terms, he's
for
not
Premier
getting
League
paid
champions,
what he's worth.
For Premier League champions, But so basically, what we're saying is that Wijnaldum is the antithesis of Joel Matip, then, in terms of fitness.
Yeah, absolutely.
There we are. We'll leave the Wijnaldum talk there because as Liverpool fans, I feel like we could go on about this for a little while, couldn't we? But yeah, perhaps if you're watching on YouTube, perhaps drop a comment. Let us know what you're thinking about probably more likely about Messi, unless you're a Liverpool fan. But if you're a Liverpool fan out there, tell us what you think about Wijnaldum. What do you think's going to happen? There we are. Jack, you put the next item in the notes.
I have.
Go on.
It's a weird one, this. Ronaldo was named Player of the Century. Now, I don't know by century if they mean from the year 2000 and they're just assuming he's going to be that good already that no one's going to eclipse him for the next 80 remaining years of this century. But just
the person who named Maradona Player of the Century in the 80s is like, oh, flipping heck. Ronaldo and Messi came along.
Yeah, I don't know how you can do that. But the organisation which did it was Globe Soccer Awards, whose majority stakeholder is CR7 Investments, which is owned by Cristiano Ronaldo. So I don't know if that's an element of it. But I just thought...
The scenes when Messi wins it, my goodness.
Could you? I mean, they also did an award for Real Madrid being the team of the last 20 years. So it's sort of in the same vein. Do you think Ronaldo and Real Madrid have been the best players of the last 20 years?
Well, can I just say something before we carry on? Because I read something else about this, and I'm pretty sure this will make you chuckle a little bit. Do you want to know who was the third best player of the century, according to this award?
Mo Salah?
I guess it's another Jorge Mendes player.
No, it was Mo Salah.
It was Mo Salah.
It was Mo
so
Salah.
There's no credibility to this, is there?
No, look, don't get me wrong. Mo Salah is an excellent player, but he's only really been an excellent player for, 4 seasons?
Yeah, I was going to say 3-4 years. It has not been very long.
There we are. Anyway, what are your thoughts on this, Josh? On the combined both of them. Well, perhaps we'll do just Ronaldo first, then we'll move on to Madrid.
Just Ronaldo? I think it's completely fair giving him that award. I think my personal preference has always been to watch Messi play over watching Ronaldo play, and I don't think that will change at this point in their careers. I think it would take something big for that to change. But I'm happy to admit that that's personal preference. And I think I think that most football fans should be in a position where they're saying that. I don't think there is a way of saying, "Oh, Ronaldo is better."
One is
Messi is
better,
better. You know, I'm happy to listen to people who say, "Well, listen, Ronaldo kind of dragged Portugal to the Euros, and Messi's never done that for Argentina." That's completely fair. Equally, if you look at some of the coaches that Messi's had at Argentina, doesn't surprise me that as a team they've been rabble.
No.
So I listen. I think they are as good as one another in different ways. Their trophy hauls are remarkably similar. Ronaldo has, I think, an extra Champions League, doesn't he? I think he's won one more than Messi, and of course he's won the international trophy. But Messi has more league titles. Maybe that says something. But no, I've always preferred watching Messi play. But I think if I wouldn't have a problem with that award being given to Ronaldo. I don't think anybody could.
What are your thoughts, Jack? Purely on the Ronaldo for the minute.
Yeah. I mean, to say best player of the century, now we're just going to rebrand this as last 20 years. 20 years is longer than his and Messi's career so far. So by saying this, they are kind of just saying Ronaldo is better than Messi for his entire career. And I probably wouldn't agree with that. I would say Messi's the better player across his career. Maybe that'll change with these sort of twilight years because, as we said before, Ronaldo's more of the athlete than Messi is the technician.
Well, I mean,
I've got no real issue with it, but I probably wouldn't agree.
I mean, I think you make a valid point there, as in if you go in on terms of at what point in their careers they've been more successful, you'd probably have to say that Ronaldo has been the more successful in the later years of his career, when you think about it, as in, as in
he's
Messi...
still competing for things, at least.
Well, yeah, but I guess there is a caveat to this in that Barcelona aren't the team they once were. So I think there is an element of that that kind of hinders Messi. But as in, at the same time, Ronaldo...
Wow. Do you not think it says more about how Messi plays, in the sense that Messi's been at Barca this whole time, and it's gone from the top right to the bottom, or well, not right to the bottom, but to very much a plateau.
It's declined, isn't it, rather than the other way around?
Whilst Ronaldo, he's joined different teams. He was at United and he won the Champions League. He moved to Real Madrid and then they won 4 Champions League. As soon as he left, they went bad. And instantly there, obviously maybe it hasn't quite taken off at Juventus, so that's the caveat to all this. But when you look at it and you see that Real Madrid have gone down without Ronaldo, so he was clearly the catalyst for the goodness. And Barcelona have gone down, but Messi's been there the entire time. Maybe he's not quite the catalyst to the same extent Ronaldo is.
I mean, I guess, I don't know what you two would think about this, but I think it is worth considering that Ronaldo has moved position in his career, as in at the start of this kind of the Messi Ronaldo era, they were both kind of wingers and kind of cutting in, scoring goals. Ronaldo's very much morphed into almost a number 9, really. Better than just an outright number 9, because he's good with ball of feet as well, but as in, having Ronaldo in and around the box, which is, how he was so successful towards the end of his time at Madrid, I think. He was just lethal in front of goals, and I don't think there was anyone who would be more prolific than Ronaldo. I think there is an element of... I don't know whether perhaps because of the type of player Ronaldo is, as in Ronaldo, because he's such a physical presence, he's so fast, as in that's the sort of player that even if the ones around you aren't quite as good, you can very much play off that, as in if you put a ball in behind and you've got Ronaldo chasing it, you're always going to be in with a chance, aren't you? Whereas because Messi's a more technical player, he not relies, but it requires a certain level of player to give him the ball and pass it through, which is why he was so successful, with that Barcelona team with Xavi and Iniesta, wouldn't he? As in, like they'd provide the ball for him in the best place, and then he'd make the most of the opportunities. But yeah, I would say it's. I'm sure you could find another award that would say Messi was the player of the century. In all honesty, I do think it is very much personal opinion. But yeah. Those would be my thoughts. I don't know whether anyone else thinks anything about that.
No, I think I agree.
Yeah,
cool. Right, Madrid then. So you said they were named the best team of the last 20 years, is that right?
Yeah. I'll be honest, I do 100% agree with this one. As good as Barca were for such a prolonged period, Real Madrid went back to back to back on Champions Leagues.
That's true.
That's unheard of. And I mean, I think that just stamped it there and then. Like, obviously they didn't do as well domestically, but if you're looking at an overall, you also have a tier of trophies, and 100% of the top is Champions Leagues, and you're winning that many, you're clearly the best.
I think I agree with it. The reason that I wouldn't come straight out and say 100% is, well, first of all, the reason I think I agree with it is for the same reason as Jack. I think, before Real Madrid's 3 in a row, the Champions League had never been retained. And then Real Madrid retain it twice in a row. That's probably enough on its own to say, well, for that reason, they're clearly the best team of the last 20 years. Mm-hmm. Equally, I think the only thing that I would hold against them would be the relative lack of domestic success, like the league titles. And I think, teams can be better suited to winning a Champions League than winning a league title. And that doesn't mean that the Champions League is easier to win. I don't think it is, because the calibre of side that you're coming up against in the Champions League is, well, they're all nearly all champions, aren't they? It is what it is. You've got the cream of the crop from every league in Europe. But it's the longevity and the consistency to be league champions. And, there have been times in the past 20 years, where Liverpool have been very, very difficult to beat in Europe, but have been nowhere near good enough to win the league. And that kind of hammers home the point that they. And I think Real Madrid, Liverpool were being an extreme example. Like the Liverpool won the Champions League in 2005 with a team that clearly wasn't good enough to even be top 4 in the Premier League. They then reached the Champions League final again 2 years later with a team that was nowhere near winning the Premier League. Liverpool are a bit of an extreme example in that case, but
excuse me.
I think Real Madrid, one argument you could level against them would be that perhaps they are slightly tilted that way, as in in a knockout tie they're very, very difficult to beat, or over that period they were, whereas over the course of a season, not quite the same level of consistency to win a league title, or I think they did win it one of the 3 years they won the Champions League, didn't they? I think they won both, but. Yeah.
Well, in the same vein, I don't think anybody's saying, well, no, I don't think many people are saying that Mourinho is a better manager than Pep outright, but Mourinho is 100% a better cup competition manager than Pep Guardiola.
Yeah.
So I guess it does go down to, as you were saying, is certain teams are just built different ways. I mean, and I guess when you do look at different clubs, when you look at Barcelona from that sort of 2009 through 2014 period, they were unplayable. Bayern Munich for 1 or 2 spots here or there were unplayable. But when you're doing it across a whole 20 years, you've got to remember that in those early 2000s, that's when Real Madrid were also very good.
That's fair.
So on the whole, I mean, it's quite easy to be blinded by how good they've been as of late. But when you consider, especially that first, the first decade of the last 20 years, you go, you think in that decade, Man United won probably 7 or 6 of the league titles in that stretch, but I don't think anybody's even remotely thinking of that. And they won Champions League.
To be honest with you, I mean, the point I was going to say is it depends on how you define greatness. Obviously, you've got the last 20 years, but it depends on how you define greatness. So in my head, right, as in, if you're talking about how good the teams are, the team that comes to my head is the Barcelona team that won, I think it was like 9 trophies in a season or something like that. So there's that team. You've also got the United team in 2008 that won the league and Champions League double, which hasn't been done since by an English team. I don't think, has it been? It hasn't, has it? No.
So because only Liverpool have won the Champions League since, and they did win the Prem that same year.
There we are. So it does very much depend on how you define the greatest of the last 20 years. But then it's the fact that it is the last 20 years. Like you say, Jack, you've got Real Madrid not dominated, but they were very good at that start. They've also shown they've been very good towards the end of that 20 years.
Barca, I wouldn't have said were particularly at the top of the echelon in that first decade.
No.
It was very much towards the end of that decade that they started to.
I guess what I'm saying is, if you put that Barcelona team against the Real Madrid team that won 3 Champions League, I think that Barcelona team is better. But the bottom line is that Barcelona team was outstanding for 1 or 2 years, maybe, whereas that Real Madrid team has been good enough to win the Champions League, retain it, and then win it again. So I think that kind of...
I agree with you. I think there's different definitions of greatness, as in, greatness is greatness longevity at the top, and a lot of people would argue that, and a lot of people would argue the greatness of Sir Alex's Man United side simply because of how long they were at the top. I don't think United, they might have been 1 point, but I'm not sure how many times in Sir Alex's managerial career at Man United did Man United win 3 league titles in a row.
They did it once.
There we go. So generally speaking, over that period, like United would win a couple, and then you got Arsenal, and then United would win a couple, and then you probably got Arsenal get a couple again, and then obviously towards the end you've got Chelsea in there as
City.
Well. But if you look over that period, not belittling the achievement, but generally, especially through the 1990s, 86, 90 points were enough to win you the Premier League, and that's the norm. If you go back and look at the points totals that won you the league, that was generally what needed to be done to win the league title, and that's fine. So and the United side of the time can only beat what's in front of them, can't they? So I'm not belittling what's been done, whereas over the last few seasons, ironically, I think this season 85, 90 points might be enough to win the Premier League again, just because they're all dropping points. But if you look at the 3 seasons before that, you've got to get 100 points to win the league. Or the league winners do get 100 points. So
I feel like that was more due to the fact that there's only like 1 or 2 teams going for it, whilst I feel like in the past there was at least 4 teams going for it. So it meant you were losing points against more teams on a more regular basis, perhaps.
All I'm saying is it comes down to your definition of greatness, doesn't it? A lot of people would say that, this current Liverpool side are not as great as the Man United sides of the 1990s and early 2000s, simply because they've only been playing as well as they have for 2 years. But then someone might turn around and say, yeah, but in 2 years to score 90, Liverpool have scored 97 and then 98 points in the league. In most other seasons, Liverpool, it's all ifs, isn't it? But, it's rare to have 2 teams at the top scoring 98 and 97 points. That's what happened 2 years ago. If Man City aren't there scoring 98 points, well then Liverpool have probably won the Premier League twice in a row, in there, done the double with the Champions League, and then gone on to win the Club World Cup and the Super Cup as well. And then perhaps people are saying, is this Liverpool side one of the greatest ever? But one of the arguments that will be levelled against this Liverpool side is, okay, they won the Champions League, but they didn't win the league, and then they won the league, but they didn't win the Champions League. It's only 2 seasons, so it does come down to your definition of greatness, doesn't it? But it's hard to argue with. I hadn't really thought of I hadn't really thought of the early 2000s. But if you are classing the Champions League as the pinnacle of domestic football, which I think it is, well, Real Madrid have won 5.
Yeah, you can't argue with.
Real Madrid have won it 5 times in 20 years. So that you think that's like a quarter of the Champions Leagues for 20 years have all gone to Real Madrid.
That's mental, isn't it? That's absolutely mental.
The remaining 15 have been shared out between Liverpool twice, Barcelona 3 times or 4, 3, 3, Bayern Munich
twice,
and AC Milan twice probably.
Man United are in there once, and I'm pretty sure Chelsea got 1.
And Man United and Chelsea once each. So, if the other 75% is shared out amongst all the other top clubs in Europe, and Real Madrid have 5 by themselves, then that probably is a fair argument to say they're the best team of the last 20 years. Probably.
There we are.
Can't argue
So, in summary, we agree with the statement. So, you said, Jack, 4 points separated second and ninth. What did they have, like a voting system? Is that how they did it? Do you know?
Those 4 points separating second and ninth are to do with the Premier League table. I probably should have put that in the notes.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. That makes sense. There we are. Right. So that's in relation to the next point then, is it?
That is in relation to the next point, yeah.
That is in relation to the next point. Spoilers. So, if you didn't know, 4 points separate second and ninth in the Premier League right now. We'll start off, just so we can get it out of the way. Liverpool well and truly got Allardyced yesterday. Thoughts, people?
Oh, Allardyce is a masterpiece. Absolute masterpiece. Because at the beginning it felt like, my goodness, they're going to get done over here. They really.
They had a wobbly start, didn't they, West Brom?
Yeah.
Robertson was just peppering them from that left-hand side.
And the thing is, that's what it felt like. It felt like this is going to be like a 3 or 4 or 5-0, and then they just didn't concede. Some cracking challenges, cracking blocks. To be fair,
a few really
Kieran
good saves
Gibbs
as well.
Yeah, Kieran Gibbs properly had. I wouldn't say he had Salah, but Salah has been a lot more prolific. Prolific. Yeah, I'll go with that word. Against most left backs, but I think Kieran Gibbs really showed up what it means to be a sort of a long stay in terms of the Premier League. He has been around for a while, but yeah, it was cracking effort by Newcastle. Not Newcastle, West Brom.
West Brom. Yeah, I mean, as a Liverpool fan, this isn't the first time we've been kind of undone by, as in, I think it's safe to say it was pretty much 9 men behind the ball, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Well, 10 men behind the ball, including the goalkeeper. Yeah, and it's not the first time we've been undone by this sort of, it was in Atletico did it to us last year in the Champions League, first leg. As in, yesterday, as a Liverpool fan, was the first time I looked at it and I was like, I wish Thiago was playing. I was like, we need Thiago on that. Yeah, but as in, there've been other times where I thought, oh no, we'll graft it out now. But as in yesterday, I was looking at it, I was like, there's no way we're getting it through the middle there. We're just going left to right, left to right, left to right. Someone cross it in, they clear it. We get the ball back, left to right, left. And it was just the same thing over and over. We just couldn't break through. I think Curtis Jones had one of his worst performances so far. Not to say that he was horrendous, but I thought his high standards so far, he didn't quite reach it.
I still think he's remarkably good for his age, but
absolutely,
absolutely. I think he was just a little bit casual yesterday on a few occasions.
But then to be fair, he wasn't the only one. I feel like as a team yesterday, Liverpool weren't. As in Robertson put a few good balls into the box, and you were like, where are our attackers?
Yeah.
As in those, they are asking to just be tapped into the net. So that as in, I'm saying that because Curtis Jones has been so good. That when he wasn't quite as good yesterday, it did kind of stand out. Joel Matip injured again. I'll be honest with you, it's getting to the point now where I'm more shocked when Matip is fit than when he's injured. Which to me is just confirming that Liverpool need to sign a centre half in January. 100%. Up until now, I've been like, oh, it's all right. We've got Matt Phillips and we've got what's his name? Is it Reece Williams?
Reece Williams has been very, very
good.
But you need a little bit more. You need a little bit more depth.
Yes.
And of course, Klopp could not have foreseen what happened. But ironically, Liverpool sold Lovren last summer, didn't they? And didn't replace him.
I still think we're better off, to be honest.
and at the time, I was, I was fine with that. And whilst Lovren had been, a bit of a servant, I wasn't sad to see Lovren go, in terms of, I think he had been calamitous, like plenty of times as well. But when you then lose Van Dijk and Gomez, who, let's face it, were basically the staple partnership of the title-winning team for the whole of last season, when you lose them for the rest of the season, both, you need some, we've got to bring somebody else in January. I think it's that simple. I said this last year, especially after I think the Atletico loss in the Champions League really highlighted it. I think when a team goes on a low block against Liverpool and does it well, I think Liverpool really, really struggle. I think when you look at where Liverpool's, going back to last season, where you look at the share of Liverpool's goals are created, it's the vast majority are through fullback. Very, very few of our goals are created in the middle, and that's fine. And that's not a criticism of our midfield. We have a brilliant midfield, but I think Atletico last season showed that when you go on a low block against Liverpool and you're disciplined with it, and it's a system that you know well and a system that you thrive on playing, that is where Thiago, for me, was the final bit of the puzzle for Liverpool. Looking at Liverpool's side last season, I think you'd be hard pressed to improve it apart from bringing in someone as good as Thiago in the position that Thiago plays and the way Thiago plays. It's like I say, it's not his fault that he's been injured all season, but I think you put Thiago into this Liverpool team, ultimately now you're not going to see it this season because we've lost Van Dijk, because we've lost Gomez. But if you could rewind time to the start of this Premier League season, and Liverpool are going in with the title winning side of last season, but the changes that they put in Thiago in that midfield, I think Liverpool. I don't think there's any doubt that Liverpool are by far and away the favourites to win the league title again. That's not a complaint because Liverpool are not the only side getting injuries. Liverpool have had a lot of them, which is partially down to the way that Klopp likes to play and the pressure that the players kind of, I guess, put themselves under, and the system puts them under to be covering, a lot of ground every match. Equally, Van Dijk's injury is not down to that. Gomez's injury is not down to that. Thiago's injury is not down to that. They're just things that happen in football. So in short, when Allardyced has got West Brom on a low block against you, they're doing it very, very well, apart from the first 15 minutes. You're virtually playing against 6 at the back. Thiago is just the man you want in your midfield, and we missed him.
Yeah, I mean, and this is not me being salty either, but as in fair play to West Brom, as in like you said, apart from that 15 minutes, they set out what they wanted to do, and you said this, Jack, just before we started, didn't you? They strangled Liverpool basically, didn't they? They just completely stopped them playing. Yeah, they stifled them. So who knows, Jack? Last week, Jack was desperate to have Big Sam Allardyce as the cover photo for the YouTube video, and I said, no chance. We are not having Sam Allardyce, but I'd be hard pressed to argue with him this week because West Brom.
I'm sure I said if Allardyce gets points off Liverpool, we'll put him as it next week.
Oh, did we? Oh, there we are. But as in they were well worthy of a draw, I think. So yeah. I hope Thiago comes back soon.
Yeah, and I agree with that as well because actually before they scored, they missed a couple of good chances.
There was one where they got a run through with that Callum Robinson or whatever. Yeah, and he just fluffed it really, but it was like, they could have won that game,
Yeah, absolutely. Without them creating loads of chances or having loads of the ball, I thought they were good value for a draw. So
yeah. So would that summarise your thoughts as well, Jack? I know we've spoken extensively, obviously, as Liverpool fans. Would that be fairly close to what you would think?
Yeah, I agree. Allardyce just choked you out,
Yeah, fair enough. Right, we have news hot off the press as well.
We do, 7 minutes before we started, which was lucky that I caught it.
City Everton's been postponed because of COVID.
Apparently a few guys got COVID during Christmas. Maybe they weren't following those lockdown rules.
Not following the regs.
But yeah, that's an interesting one. Second case this year if it's happening, isn't it? Villa had it earlier in the season.
But I mean, what's going to make this sort of thing interesting is that obviously this match has to be plopped in somewhere else in the season now. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see if that affects the scheduling or anything like that. So there we are. Right. This topic, I've been looking forward to discussing this one.
Oh, yeah. I love a good bruiser. We haven't got Arsenal anymore to bruise, so we're going to bruise the team that just lost to them.
Chelsea. Right. Frank Lampard. So he's been at Chelsea. He had a full season last season, albeit a slightly disrupted season. They had a transfer ban, so he couldn't sign anyone. He was playing players like Tammy Abraham and Mason Mount, who did very well, to be fair, I think, on the whole. Tomori as well. They've then gone and spent a lot of money. I'm right in saying, 200 million. So they've brought in Thiago Silva from PSG on a free. They've bought Kai Havertz and Timo Werner.
They got Pulisic last year as well.
Hakim Ziyech.
Yeah, who?
Hakim Ziyech.
Yeah, Ziyech. Yeah, there we are. So they've bolstered. They've bolstered.
A lot of money. But they didn't join because of the money. They joined because they want to play for Lampard. That's the mantra. They want to play for Lampard.
What about Ben Chilwell?
Yeah. Oh yeah, and Chilwell. Yeah. Gosh, yeah. I mean, the thing is that I don't know about you, Josh. Well, and Jack actually. Going into this season, I was kind of like, for me, Chelsea are one of the favourites. Yeah. As in, for me, the three were.
They had.
Yeah, for me, the three teams at the top were Liverpool, Chelsea, and City.
What about United?
But no. But as in, it's just it just doesn't seem to quite be clicking for for Lampard at Chelsea, does it? And they've just lost to Arsenal, and it's well documented on this podcast that Arsenal haven't been doing too well.
Yeah.
Arsenal have not been doing well, and again, it wasn't like a scrappy. As in 3-0 is fairly comprehensive.
3-1. Yeah.
Was it 3-1? Yeah. Apologies, 3-1.
They've lost 3 of the last 4. They've played of the 8 top teams being Liverpool, Tottenham, United, Everton, Wolves, Arsenal, Leicester, City. They've played 6 of them, and they've only picked up 2 points in those 6.
Wow.
He's a fraud.
So is he? So who are those points against then? Did he draw with? No, he lost
drew
to
to United. He drew Spurs, drew to United. So he lost to Liverpool, he lost to Everton, lost to Wolves, lost to Arsenal.
And the thing is, Wolves have struggled a little bit as well.
Yeah.
So as in, you would have expected them to have beaten Wolves and obviously Arsenal, given their current form. So yeah, the thing is, Chelsea, is they've been a little bit up and down. And I don't know about you, but I still don't think he knows his best team. I'm convinced he doesn't know his best team. As in, every week, match of the, if I haven't watched it live, match of the day will come on, and I'll be like, oh, Tammy Abraham's starting up front this week, or I'm pretty sure Timo Werner's been playing on the wing.
Yeah, he has been playing Werner on the wing, and I think
why?
Because he hooked him at half time, didn't he? After playing on the wing, and I think that kind of revealed a little bit. Sometimes managers make changes, and you see what's going on in their head a bit, don't you? And I think that kind of was a pretty stark display of what Lampard actually thinks of Werner on the wing. Yeah. Equally, he wasn't. I think I'd be right in saying I haven't watched all of Chelsea's matches, but I don't think Werner was exactly setting the world alight when he was playing up front before this.
No, that's true.
He's played 2 or 3, maybe 4 matches on the wing now, isn't he? But before that, I don't think he was really hitting the heights up top.
But how much is that Werner and how much is that Lampard? Because he was hitting the heights when he was back in RB Leipzig, wasn't he?
That's true.
Yeah.
But and this isn't me crowing as a Liverpool fan now, because Liverpool were linked with him in quite a big way, weren't they, for 50 million plus? But how good has he been at all since he signed for Chelsea? And I don't know. As in, I haven't watched all of Chelsea's games. There might be a Chelsea fan out there who turn around and say, "Well, no, Josh, there was a patch where he was playing really well," and I say, "Well, fair enough." But has he? Certain signings, happen and players just click and straight away you think, and one of them is Jota this season. And, there was a lot of press about how Jota wasn't Liverpool's first choice. Liverpool wanted Ismail Assar from Watford, and, he was one of those ones that when we signed him, I thought, well, we'll wait and see, But that's a signing that's just worked, and you can't deny that signing's worked. Whereas, is Werner one of those signings? Is Havertz one of those signings? I think if you look at the signings that Chelsea have made, there's no doubt that Ziyech is quality. But of course, he's not. He's injured at the moment, so he's not playing, and they're missing him. I don't think there's any doubt that Pulisic is quality either, but he's also out and he's also missing. And so I think I would love to sit here and crow and say, yeah, Lampard's a fraud. I don't think Lampard is a fraud. I think he's...
that little chuckle from Jack.
But it is still quite enjoyable hearing Jack Freeman say the words. I think he's going to need time, and I know you hear everybody say that, but I do think it's going to take longer than this season for Chelsea to just go and win the league.
Do you reckon Abramovich gives him that sort of time? I doubt he'd have given any of the other managers. I mean, maybe because Lampard's an ex-player, they might like him a little bit more. But
yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, again, I've said this already. It is really, really hard to predict this season's top 4. I think it's impossible. I think, one thing this might come back to bite me, I hope it doesn't, but one thing I'd say with a fair amount of certainty is Liverpool are finishing in the top 4. I think Liverpool are, even with their injuries, I think Liverpool are too good not to get top 4. I would have thought by the end of the season that City would be in there, just because of the amount of quality they've got in their squad. It was only last season, easy to forget, it was only last season that even though Liverpool are romping clear at the top, people saying, oh, Liverpool haven't got as much squad depth as City. Well, that has that, I guess that's changed in a way because Liverpool have signed players like Jota, but, City surely are too good not to get top 4.
And to be fair, they're playing a different brand to what they used to. They used to just go out there and thump teams. They're now going, we're happy with 2-0. Just don't concede. Just don't concede all the time.
So, but I guess what I'm saying is where my head is at is that Liverpool and City are finishing in the top 4. I think the other two is very, very difficult to predict. I mean, is it a Leicester or are you, or is it United? United aren't going away at the moment, are they?
They're still there. They're going to be there at the end of the season.
So it's going to be one of those. It's going to be one of those strange ones where it's incredibly crowded to get into that top four, and you got other good teams that like Everton are still there, and
and Villa can go second if they win their games in hand.
If Villa win their 2 games in hand, Villa are second, a point behind Liverpool. So it's a strange one, and where I was going with this point is if I'm a Chelsea fan and at the end of the season Chelsea have missed out on the top 4, I'd be gutted, and I think then
I don't think they'll stick with them then.
Then you really are in a bit of a catch-22. Whereas I think, this won't go on forever. But like last season, it was if Lampard gets top 4, he'll be fine. I think it's kind of that for this season as well. I think 4th. If I'm a Chelsea fan and Chelsea finish 4th, I think okay, well, it would have been nice if it had been better, but equally we've kind of ticked the box. We've done what we need to do. And we go again next year, and hopefully, it'll all click. And Lampard's had a bit longer, and they've had a bit more consistency, and the players have all bedded in. If Chelsea miss out on top 4, then that gets really interesting. I think really interesting, and it's not outside the realm of possibility because you've got a lot of teams in that. That's the point. No, not Liverpool at the top, but Liverpool aren't clear of that pack. So as far as I can see, that pack goes down to 7th, really, doesn't it? And you've got a lot of teams in there playing well, but still dropping points along the way. It'll be incredibly well. What do you two think? As hard as it is to predict, what's your top 4 at the end of the season?
Oh gosh,
I love this. I tried to coax Jack into one of these earlier in the season.
It's difficult.
I'll be honest. I have changed my tune. I no longer think Liverpool are going to miss out on the top. As much as that was tongue in cheek, I thought possibly with all these injuries, but no, they're probably going to win the league. I'll be honest. I do think United are going to end up sticking around. I reckon they'll be 2nd or 3rd.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I think City. I agree they'll be up there. And do I think that I'd love to see Everton get there, just to prove almost that Carlo Ancelotti is a world-class manager. Because if he can do it with Everton, he can do it with anyone. I don't think Leicester will be there. Brendan Rodgers just seems to bottle it, whatever the job he's got. And then maybe Villa scrape somewhere close. Spurs could, but my only reservation with Spurs is that I feel that they're too dependent on Kane and Son. If any of them two get an injury, that team collapses. And they're sort of going into that shell of that really defensive style of football. But that might have been just because they've had some hard games recently, and maybe they're going to start being a little bit more creative again going forward. But at the moment, I'm saying it's going to be Liverpool, United, City, and Everton.
I'm going to stick my neck out. I think it's going to be not necessarily in this order. I think Liverpool will be in the top 4. I think City and United in the top 4. The way things are going, I think Villa could get there. I really do.
I don't think they've got it in the long run. That's my only reservation. I don't think Ollie Watkins is proven enough to keep him up.
Well, no. The way I see it is this: if you put in Leicester in that potentials bracket, I'd have Aston Villa above Leicester this season.
Really,
I really would.
To be fair, hot off the press, as we are recording, Leicester have just drawn 1-1 with Crystal Palace.
There we are.
And of course,
Leicester as well.
Play Chelsea tonight, don't they?
This is the thing as well. Leicester had a really good start, but once again, they've started to kind of have a bit of a wobbly period. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll look back in that and people will laugh at me. But the way things are at the moment, I think Everton seem to have been fits and starts. In all honesty, they have had injuries. To be fair, I don't think Wolves are quite there. I think they haven't really had a chance to replace. And they haven't really replaced Jota. I don't think because Neto is very good. But I think in order to be in those positions, you've got to have at least one good alternative, I think. And I'm not sure Wolves do right now. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what will happen.
Can I just bed in here? I'm having a look at the league table as it stands at the moment. And in quarter of an hour's time, Chelsea kick off against Aston Villa at Stamford Bridge. And this is, of course, this is an if. But if Villa were to beat Chelsea tonight...
I know, Chelsea closer to Arsenal. Chelsea, is that what you've been looking at?
If Villa beat Chelsea tonight, and then this is another if Southampton win their game in hand, which is against West Ham, then Chelsea would be 9th.
Wow.
Ninth. And
Well, I'm just loving that if they lose tonight, they are closer to Arsenal than they are to Liverpool.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah.
That's rough.
Which is rough, isn't it? If you're a Chelsea fan, like that's just, that's hard to stomach.
That's
Equally, there's a
yeah,
long
but
time
we,
to go,
we've but we've said this. Yeah, we've said this before. As in the table is very volatile at the moment. As in Chelsea are in ninth.
I feel like it's starting to find its structure.
It is a little bit.
The
That's
teams
true.
the cream of the crop is getting to the top,
Agreed.
and the bad stuff's getting to the bottom, or whatever the way around it is.
Yeah, there we are. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, particularly with Chelsea. Who knows? Chelsea might be the ones getting relegated. Instead of
Let's not go that far ahead yet.
Right, we'll move on to the last thing of the football, and then we'll move to NFL. So Carragher and Neville have done their Premier League Team of the Year. So when they see Team of the Year, I'm guessing they're talking January to December, right? As opposed to...
I'm assuming so.
You'd assume so.
Yeah, I kind of assumed that.
I'd assume it's that, but if that was... in a sense, I can almost see that's why he's got so many non-Liverpool players in there. Because they did go on a little bit of a lapse towards the second half of last year. But, yeah, what do you make of it?
So I'll just read it out for the people's benefit at home. You've got Alisson in goals. You've got Trent Alexander-Arnold at right back with Connor Cody and Virgil van Dijk as centre half. Andy Robertson at left back. Then you've got Henderson at holding midfield with De Bruyne on the right hand side, Fernandes on the left, as in Bruno Fernandes from Manchester United. Then you've got Salah on the right wing, Son on the left wing, Kane through the middle. What are your thoughts on it, Jack?
If I'm honest, I feel Connor Cody is in there because Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher are English, and he's had maybe 2 good games at Wolves this season, and they've gone, yeah, that's enough. Chuck him in there. I think they just wanted an English player there to sort of raise the nation's hopes. Maybe not our nation. Trent and Robertson and Van Dijk, without a doubt, 100% are the best defenders in the league at the moment. Alisson's probably rightfully in there. I mean, if you go in the last 12 months, he's been injured for a fair few of them. But to be honest, you'd be hard pressed to spot a keeper that's been better over the 12 months.
Yeah.
What are your guys' thoughts on that sort of back five-ish at the moment?
I agree. Out of interest, do you have someone in mind that you would pick over Cody? I'm struggling to think through centre halves at the moment, but
well, Harry Maguire. Him and Lindelof, dynamic duo. No. Trying to think who's had a pretty decent year. To be honest, it's hypocritical of me to say no to Cody without having an alternative, but I haven't really looked at the moment.
I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that he doesn't stick out. Like, I'm a Liverpool fan, and that might add to a bias. I think the other 4 are shoo-ins, aren't they? Like, I'm struggling to think of a keeper who's been better than Alisson, even with his injuries and even with less game time. I don't think Trent Alexander-Arnold has been as good this season yet as he was last season.
But that's only because we're looking at him on the basis of his attacking returns. Well, actually, to be fair, the defence has not been great, but you know what I mean? Robertson and Trent, the primary focus of them is how many goals and assists are they getting this year.
I think, since the start of this season, I think Robertson's been superb. Like, there's been a couple of errors in there, but I think overall he's been fantastic. I think Van Dijk is possibly the easiest pick in the team. I think
is there not a shout for Joe Gomez there instead of Connor Cody?
I don't think
is that a bit biased?
As spectacular as I mean. To be honest, when you've got the other 3 and Alisson there, I think he can. I mean, to be fair, I haven't watched many Liverpool games to see it, but when you see the other ones in any highlights, they always go, "Wow, they're a cut above the mustard."
Oh yeah, I think I think out of the 5, sorry, if you're talking about goalkeeper and defence, out of those 5, Joe Gomez would be the one that's not quite as impressive as the other 4.
And as good as Gomez has been, there has to be.
Yes.
So you've got to kind of take into account that it's probably a lot easier to look good when you play with a centre half partner like Van Dijk.
Well, just look at Lovren for that half a season that they were the two, as in Virgil van Dijk made him look good.
Yeah.
And look at him without Van Dijk. Yeah, so I think in all honesty, I wouldn't. I'd be hard pressed to find anyone to. Yeah, as in I would pick.
I'd probably put maybe I was thinking maybe a Man City defender to replace Cody. Someone like Laporte, but he's been pretty injury prone, annoyingly. But
Well,
only
the thing
because
is as well,
when you look
City
at the 12
struggled
months,
as well.
yeah, but over the last 12 months, I was thinking, yeah, most of them you go off the basis of last season, but City this season have the best defensive record. They've only conceded 12. So I was just like, well, perhaps you chuck one of them in there, but, maybe Laporte he hasn't really been instrumental in this year either. Should we move forward with the team?
Yeah.
Sure.
Midfield.
I'm sure you guys love Henderson, so I'm sure you guys aren't going to complain with that one.
No.
I wouldn't complain with any of them, actually. The midfield three of
I'd be happy with that.
Henderson, De Bruyne, Fernandes. I think probably... Yeah, I would pick those three, probably. I 100% agree. I think...
You would have Fabinho over Henderson?
Perhaps you should have him as centre-half instead of Cody.
That's a tricky one. That's a tricky one because Fabinho's played most of this season at centre-half, isn't he? Like, Fabinho is a fantastic player, there's no doubt. But
Not N'Golo Kante, maybe?
no.
Not anymore.
No.
Not anymore. I feel like...
Kante's a good player, but I wouldn't have him over Henderson, De Bruyne or Fernandes.
Not right now, anyway.
No.
Yeah, I'll be honest. In my mind, I 100% think De Bruyne and Fernandes. But I'm just thinking of Henderson. I mean, as a Man United fan, I don't really see Henderson as being spectacular. But I know you guys rave about him, so maybe it's something I'm not seeing. But I'm hard pressed, to be honest, to think of a replacement that's better than him. But I don't know. If I looked at the team and I was looking for weaknesses, just as a neutral, I'm looking at Cody, I'm looking at Henderson. I think the rest of them are all spectacular, but that might just be my bias.
Silence from the Liverpool fans.
You can feel the resentment there.
over the phone, you can feel the rage building up.
No, no. Listen, I think we could probably do a podcast, just debating how good Henderson is and where he really ranks in a top band of midfielders. Again, in terms of raw quality.
You already said that.
Yeah, listen, on I feel like I spent a fair amount of the time in this podcast talking about him, but on quality alone, Liverpool's best midfielder is Thiago. There's no doubt how good he is, but I don't think it's necessarily about is Henderson as good as De Bruyne or Fernandes. De Bruyne is one of the for me, De Bruyne is one of the top three midfielders in the world. I think Thiago, based on what he's done for Bayern Munich, is also one of the top three midfielders in the world. And,
But this is a Premier League one, so I don't think. Well, Thiago's played 5 games in the league, so I don't think he's even in consideration.
No. And I wasn't arguing to have Thiago in this team. I was just making the point of how good I think De Bruyne is. I think he's that good.
Fair enough.
Fernandes, I don't think Fernandes is as good as De Bruyne, but I do think that Fernandes' quality is clear in what
I agree with that.
and how he's kind of turned this Man United side around. Equally, it doesn't make him less of a player, but when people talk about Fernandes' numbers, if Henderson took penalties, who knows? Fernandes has scored an awful lot of penalties over the last 9 months. Which probably skews it a little bit. It's good for fantasy football. I got him in my fantasy. Look, I've got.
I've just chucked him in. I've been fed up with it. I cannot stand not having Fernandes in my team.
Listen, I've got. I spent most of the first part of the season with De Bruyne in my team. I've now got Fernandes in my team. I haven't got Henderson in my team. However, I can't think of a midfield.
But that's fantasy football, yeah. You don't pick Henderson for fantasy football, that's for sure.
I can't think of a midfielder in the Premier League I'd put in that team ahead of Henderson. It's that simple.
For me, the best way to see that Henderson is as good as he is to look at Liverpool last season when Henderson got injured and look at how much they struggled. As in at the end of the day, if a team that's won the league by that distance... I didn't realise he got injured. Yeah, he got injured. I'm trying to think when it was now. Wasn't there a period of about 4 or 5 games where he was injured? I'm sure there was.
Yeah, and a couple of things in terms of leadership as well. I remember it was Boxing Day last year. We went and beat Leicester 4-0 at the King Power Stadium and absolutely tore them to shreds. And then in the following month, we had to play
Wolves, wasn't it?
Wolves twice. We kind of scraped past them at home. I think it was 2-1. And that was a tricky one because it was only 3 days after we'd beaten Leicester 4-0, and I think we knew that the Leicester performance was was a performance of a champion, a champion team. I think we knew that we weren't going to play that well again 3 days later, but we beat them 2-1. Then we went away from home to Wolves, and I would go down on record as saying I think that was one of our toughest games of the season. Wolves away, and who pops up with the crucial goal? Henderson, and again, not prolific, not going to get you loads and loads of assists. Numbers are not going to be anywhere near as good as De Bruyne or Fernandes. Memorable moments, doesn't produce as many as De Bruyne or Fernandes, but like you say, take him out of the Liverpool team and Liverpool struggle. And he's a top player. There's no doubt about that. So no, those would be the three midfielders I would have picked.
That could have been Graham Souness then, the way you said that. He's a top player. There we are.
I like that.
That's an insult.
What about the strike force then? I mean, Salah, I think, undoubtedly, and Kane was the top scorer. So I think them two are dead for rights in.
Can I be controversial?
Go ahead and be controversial.
Well, there are two things I think. I think Son is a bit fortunate to be there, in all honesty. He's very good.
He's been good this year.
He has, very good this year. Here's the other thing I would say. I'd almost have Mane ahead of Salah.
That was going to be one of my questions. Is
wow.
I think I would go for. I think listen. Last season. I think I'm saying the right thing here. Last season, Sadio Mane was Liverpool's best player. I'm putting that out there, and that's a difficult. Like for me, Liverpool's most important player is Virgil van Dijk.
I was going to say Salah.
Not Bobby Firmino.
Apart from Van Dijk.
Listen, as a Liverpool fan, for a good few years, for a long time, you're watching a Liverpool side that could score goals but just didn't have a quality defender for years and years. And listen, Brendan Rodgers would have won the league with a decent defender, but he didn't have any decent centre-halves. He's playing Mamadou Sakho and Kolo Touré and Martin Skrtel. So when Van Dijk comes in, and for the first time possibly since Sami Hyypiä was at Liverpool have got a top centre-back. It's hard to put into words how important Virgil van Dijk is to Liverpool. And that's kind of a testament to how they've kept on chugging without him. But even though I think Van Dijk is Liverpool's most important player, possibly with Alisson, because you could say the same thing about goalkeeper, I think Sadio Mane was our best player last season. And I know, like Jamie Carragher said it over and over, and I'd agree with him. Equally, this season, I don't think Mane has been quite as good as he was last season, but that doesn't take away from how good he was last season. And Salah is just a goal-scoring machine. Like, he's ridiculous. I don't know how he just scores so many goals. It's ridiculous. and even when he's not playing well, and Salah kind of drifts in and out of games, but then he just scores goals. His numbers are very, very hugely impressive. So it's a hard one. That was when I saw that front three. The first thing that popped into my head was, oh no, Mane.
Mane's unfortunate, yeah.
Just because he's been so good last season, but I don't know. It's a 50-50 probably. I'd possibly put Mane in there ahead of Salah, possibly, but I don't know. It's hard to pick.
I mean, let me put it this way. I'm not saying that is outrageous. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it's outrageous that Son's in there, obviously, but as in when I look at that, and I'm like, surely.
I would say Mane's not been particularly great this season.
That's true. That's true.
He hasn't scored many, and he's not really done a lot else. But Son this season has been absolutely, unplayable for some periods of the season. So I feel it's always hard to pick a player. Like it's always say with the Ballon d'Or, that's on a 12-month basis. You know what I mean? It's not on the football season. It's on the 12 months, and it's like, well, nobody's looking at this current season. It never gets enough weight because you always got to see the full body of work. You got to wait to the end of the season before you can sort of grade anybody. But I'd put Son there, if I'm honest. I like him.
Next question. Harry Kane is a very good pick. Is there an argument for putting Jamie Vardy in there? He was top scorer last season. I'm just asking.
I thought it was Kane.
I think it was Vardy. I think it was Vardy and Aubameyang, wasn't it?
Fair enough.
Is that I'm just asking?
I think that does sound right. Yeah, just how you say it, it's like, oh, maybe it was. It's Harry Kane. I mean,
Yeah.
I can see what you mean by Vardy, but I think if anybody's building I guess it is team of the season or team of the year. So yeah, it's a tough one. It's a flip of the coin, but I think I would prefer Kane in that team.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I'd probably agree with that, I think.
Cool.
There we
Should we
are.
move on?
Yes, we'll move on. We'll do our shock of the week. Mine's already been said, really. Arsenal won. That's the shock of the week.
Did you have a shock, Josh? Because mine sort of links into the next thing. If not, no worries.
Oh, I think I'm going to agree with
Put you
you.
on the spot, yeah.
I'm gonna agree with you just because I said that the Arsenal Chelsea one was my highlight of the week. Did I? So
Yeah.
I'm gonna pick a different shock of the week. I'm going with Jack Freeman.
Oh, great. Well, I guess me and Josh can carry on. The Jets go back to back with their wins. They are no longer winless. They are a 2 and they could end up a 3, but they are currently a 2-13 team. Incredible effort. But yeah, they won yesterday against the Cleveland Browns, who were COVID-stricken. But that means the Jets will not be the number 1 draft pick this year. It will be the Jacksonville Jaguars. Crazy times. But yeah, let's move on to the NFL then. In the same vein.
1 game remaining for the playoffs.
Yes.
It's crunch time, baby.
I love these last 2 weeks of the regular season. It's just like how it
it's
all
crazy,
plays out.
and you can see how it's clear now. Everybody knows what they got to do. It is crunch time. It is the last week of the season this weekend, and it's all gonna get spicy. Yeah. Well, Eagles
Go on,
eliminated. Eagles eliminated from the playoffs. Meaning the
Oh.
NFC East will not have a repeat winner for the 16th consecutive year. Which I didn't know that until yesterday, and I think that's crazy. Not to have
That's
a
a good
single.
stat. That could have been
No
that could be
team has
stat of the week.
ever. Yeah, no team has ever repeated an NFC East championship. That's crazy to think.
And
Wow.
the NFC East is the dog division of the NFL, isn't it? Like
Yes.
when you consider like most of the divisions, I'd say apart from the NFC East, all of the other divisions have at least one playoff team, like playoff caliber.
Well, at least
team.
one winning team.
Yeah, exactly. And when you consider, for me, if you look at the NFC West, you've got 4 potential playoff teams there. I think they're all they're all good enough. Seattle have won it, haven't they? But then you've got
they just clinched it yesterday.
You've got LA Rams, who are definitely playoff caliber. You've got, I think the Arizona Cardinals are playoff caliber. I know Kyler Murray
very good.
struggled for 2 or 3 weeks in a row, didn't he? But I think the Cardinals are good enough. And then the 49ers have been ripped apart by injuries this season, haven't they? But
and still being competitive.
Yeah.
That's the crucial thing.
So you've got 4 teams in the NFC West who I think are all better than all 4 teams in the NFC East.
Yeah, well, they showed the division, current division winners, or teams that are in first at the moment, and they were showing, the Packers, 13-2, or something like that, and it was going through them all, and they were all, double digits and a single loss, and then it just went, Washington, 6-8. It's
Wow.
wow.
6 and 9, aren't they?
Yeah. They aren't even going to be a winning team. It's good gracious, what are these guys doing?
Yeah, it's not great, really, is it? Yeah, so you were going through it with me yesterday, weren't you? And it was 12 and something, 11 and something, 6 and 8. It's wow, okay.
Yeah, it's embarrassing how not good.
Excuse me.
That is.
Yeah.
Another crazy stat, which I only saw today, was going into week 17. If the Giants win and the Washington football team loses, the Giants will be the NFC East champions.
Yeah.
But if they lose and a load of other teams win, they could end up with the 3rd overall draft pick.
Yeah.
They could be the 3rd worst team, or they could be a division winner this weekend.
That's ridiculous, isn't it?
That is
How
an absolute
stupid is that?
crazy list of things they could be.
Yeah, it's crazy. I had a look at the NFC conference table this morning, and the Giants current on their current record is the 13th best out of 16 teams. So that's where they are in reality. But in practice, give it a week, and they could potentially effectively be fourth.
Well, yeah, it's a one-game win and you're in now.
Yeah, they got
to beat the
best
Cowboys,
division
and they just need the Washington to lose.
And I one of my neighbours is a Giants fan, and at the start of the season, I chatted to him and I just said, as a Giants fan, what does a good season look like for you? And he was like, 8-8 would be a dream. and like, here they are. They're 5-10, the Giants, yeah, and they're one game away from not only getting into the playoffs, but as a division winner. So that's not a wild card. Yeah. They're in as a division leader. Crazy.
They will host a game.
Yeah.
How on earth are they hosting a game?
As a reward for winning, like they would have had to have won 6 games, wouldn't they? So as a reward for winning, like having a 6-10 record, you get a home playoff game.
It's like chucking the Jets, the Jags, the Bengals, and some other rubbish team into one division and going, well, one of you is going to make the playoffs. Well done. It's like, it's not quite fair, this.
And play at home, yeah.
Yeah, the other team will visit you because you deserve it. But yeah, going into the sort of wild card and division winners scenarios, I sort of put a bit about each of them. Should we start with the AFC division winners?
Go for it.
Let's go. Well, the Chiefs clinched the 1 seed yesterday by beating the Falcons in a quite nervy game. I mean, we were talking to each other as it was going on.
Was it?
No. But they get the bye week now because they clinched the 1 seed. Only one team in each conference gets a bye week, and that means they won't have to play in the first round of the playoffs. So it's like you skip a stage, and that means you a bit easier road to the Super Bowl. But because they've already done it, and there's one game left, that essentially means it could be 3 weeks until they play another competitive game. Do you think this could have an adverse effect on the team?
I think it definitely could, and we were chatting about it the other night, weren't we? And if you look at last season, the top 2 finishers in each conference got a bye, and last season in the AFC that was Baltimore and Kansas City, and if you look at the effect that the bye week had on those 2 teams, I don't think it's much of a stretch to say that it had an adverse effect on them both. Baltimore came out, with a 14-2 record and lost at home to the Titans. And Kansas City were 24 points down to the Texans in, I think it was the first quarter, wasn't it? Like it was just ridiculous.
And then they came back.
And then they came back. It was like over 50 points on them. But, it's a tough one, isn't it? Because it's forever been a trade-off, isn't it, for coaches of like teams that have won, the conference or been in the positions to have a bye. Do you rest your top players and save them from injury, but risk losing momentum? And it's definitely a trade-off.
But to be fair, because it's 3 weeks, in a sense, I think it's almost impossible to hold that momentum.
Yeah.
So I guess they almost have to really endorse the bye week mentality now and go, right lads, we're going to have 2 nice weeks here and then we're going to kick it into gear, rather than saying, okay, should we go full throttle at it all the time? And I mean, because the Chiefs are a little bit banged up, especially offensive line, and they lost Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the running back, to injury. Sort of lost him to injury. He could come back for the playoffs, so it could be a good chance to rest and get fit.
And I think for me, if the trade-off is, having players who are a little bit banged up and a little bit tired, but have still got momentum, I would keep them in. But because I think having momentum is more important than being at absolute peak physical condition. Having said that, you keep your players in there. There's a risk that like we saw what happened to Dak Prescott.
What if Mahomes goes out? Yeah,
we saw what happened to Dak Prescott earlier this season. It would be horrendously unlucky, but it would be completely within the realm of sport for Patrick Mahomes to have a season-ending injury next week in a complete dead rubber game. So, it's a hard one for a coach, surely, because you wouldn't be human if you didn't have that nagging thought: do I risk someone? Do I risk Mahomes? Do I risk Kelsey? Do I risk Hill?
Play the backup, I say. Play the backup.
Yeah.
Not worth it.
I think so. Equally, I mean, I watched, the All or Nothing, like documentaries on Amazon Prime. I watched the Arizona Cardinals one of them.
2016.
Before Christmas, purely because
Tyrann Mathieu was there. Oh. Tyrann Mathieu.
Yeah, that's right. And
he was there too.
I had just kind of read on, like asked online, which is the best season, and my overriding feeling was, the first season's the best. So I thought, okay, I'll watch the Cardinals one. And at that point, the Cardinals coach was Bruce Arians, who's now Tampa Bay with Tom Brady. And they finished second in the NFC that year, which got them a bye. And he was asked the question, do you rest your players or do you keep them in and keep the momentum going? And literally, without very much thought at all, his answer was keep them in and keep the momentum. So it is a hard one.
Although in that scenario, if he's finishing second, that means he probably was still playing for it going into that Week 17 match. But because the Chiefs haven't even got to win that anymore, it's already wrapped up. It's 2 weeks almost. It's like, it's going to be such a struggle for them to keep that momentum.
And two other things, I guess, would be the Chiefs. I don't think there's any doubt that the Chiefs have got the most explosive offense in the league. And they've been there and done it now, haven't they? So like last season, they were 24 points down to the Texans and they overturned it convincingly. They were down to the Titans early and they overturned that. So, do you kind of back, if you're Andy Reid, do you back the fact that, I've got a group of players here who've done a bye week last year, who've come through it and who have been in the playoffs before and overturned big deficits. So I'm gonna back their experience, I'm gonna back their know-how, and I'm gonna rest them so that they fit and so that they, is that enough to offset the loss of momentum? Maybe it is,
Yes, it's an interesting one.
I agree. You've literally said everything that I was potentially thinking. I think it's also worth considering the COVID aspect as well.
You don't want them going all flimsy and then getting it, and then it's like, well, guys, you're out for 5 days.
Exactly.
You've got it for 2 weeks.
Yeah. So I'm normally a momentum person, but I don't know. It's just a fun to call. I'd almost say just wrap Mahomes up in cotton wool. Just don't let him get injured or get COVID. Especially given that, as in because you said this last night, Jack, didn't you? When we were watching, you're like, is it worth if it's going to be 2 weeks, is it worth just embracing it, sucking it up, and just going again? But I don't know. I really don't know.
And when the Chiefs played the Saints,
there's no winners, I think.
Mahomes did to take a couple of knocks, didn't he? And
he got absolutely crunched on one of the sacks.
And you just think, do you know what? The more I talk about it, the more I think, I wouldn't play Mahomes this weekend.
Maybe you follow by example. Bill Belichick rests Tom Brady whenever they made the playoffs, if they had games to spare. So maybe follow what the greatest of all time did.
I'd be resting Mahomes personally. And the thing is as well, I feel like in the playoffs there's that, because it's that kind of do or die attitude. I feel like all it would take is for one player to be like, right, I am just gonna, whether the ball is with him or not, I am just going to absolutely flatten Mahomes. That's all it's going to take.
The Steelers, as we mentioned earlier, snapped their 3-game losing streak, coming back from 21-7 down to win 28-21 against the Colts, who were pretty good. So they've clinched the AFC North. I don't know if it's guaranteed if they get the second seed yet, because the Bills play the what are they called? Patriots this evening. So if the Bills lose tonight, possibly the Steelers rest some players next week because they won't have the bye. That could be an interesting one. Bills clinch the AFC East as well.
Fair enough.
What were we going to say then, Josh? Sorry?
I was going to ask, is it so? If the Bills lose tonight, that leaves the Bills 11-4, right? And the Steelers 12-3. But does that guarantee Pittsburgh the number 2 seed? I
think if the Bills win, obviously it's still up for grabs. I don't know what the scenario is if they lose. It didn't say that wherever I've read. I don't know. Truth be told, but I assume it could still be in the realms of opportunity that they could get the second seed. But to be honest, I don't know how many teams are clamouring for that second seed, because that'll mean they go up against potentially Baltimore as the seventh seed. I think I'd rather play a team like the Dolphins or the Colts over Baltimore. So it could be interesting. I'm sure both teams will probably keep the momentum and just keep going with it.
I think I'm right in saying, though, even though at the moment the Dolphins are the fifth seed and the Ravens are the sixth seed, I think the Ravens have got the Bengals, haven't they? I think as their last match. So, no disrespect to the Bengals, but the Ravens are on a 4-game winning streak, and they're a very, very good side. So I think the Ravens will beat the Bengals. I can't remember who the Dolphins have got, but I remember thinking that it was a potential banana skin match.
I tell you what, if you scroll down a touch, we got the AFC wildcard race later, so we can come back to that one. Okay. But for the time being, for division winners, 3 teams have clinched their divisions. AFC South's the only one still remaining unclinched. An interesting one because it's the Titans and the Colts going for it. Titans need to win against the Texans. If they don't, the Colts need to win against the Jaguars. And interestingly, the Jaguars' only win this season was against the Colts, and they've already got the number 1 draft pick this year. So there's nothing to lose by going out there and trying to win that game. That should be an interesting one,
Yeah.
But going back to the wild card race, which was a little bit further down. Dolphins, they play the Bills in the last week.
So that could be a Bills
That's
win.
not nice. Yes, but then the Dolphins do have Dolphins have the second best chance of winning. Those percentages, the Dolphins have an 84.1% chance of making the playoffs. Those are using certain algorithms. But they need to win against the Bills, or the Ravens need to lose, or Cleveland needs to lose, or the Colts need to lose. So they're in good stead.
Are we at a place where we can give our predictions for what those wildcard round matches will look like?
Please do.
Right. I think that obviously Kansas City are going to be the first seed. I think Pittsburgh will be the second seed. I think Buffalo will be the third seed. And I do think that Tennessee will be the fourth seed. So that I think they'll be the division winners. The wild cards, obviously you've got 3 wild cards. I see that being Baltimore as the 5th seed, Indy as the 6th seed, Miami 7th, and I think Cleveland will miss out.
Which is hilarious because they had 91% chance of making the playoffs 2 weeks ago.
And then they went and lost to the Jets. And I know they were missing all their wide receivers, but it's just gutting for the Browns fans.
It's the Jets.
The reason I think that is I think Baltimore will beat the Bengals, so I think they're going to finish 11-5. I think Indianapolis will possibly, I don't know who was their last game, but I remember thinking that Indianapolis would win their last game. So
theirs is against the Jags.
Yeah, so Indianapolis I think will beat the Jags, so they will also be 11-5, but on tiebreakers they will be behind Baltimore. Whereas I think Miami will lose against the Bills, which will leave them 10-6. So they'll be a game worse
They'll
off.
be game downs.
So for me, that puts Baltimore 5th, Indianapolis 6th, and Dolphins 7th. So that would make the wild card round the Steelers against the Dolphins.
That's tough.
Yeah.
That's so going to be the... thing is, it depends what Steelers team shows up. If the Steelers come with the same attitude they had for the previous 3 weeks, I fancy the Dolphins because they're just one of those teams that seem to have it.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
Tough one.
It would put the Bills against the Colts.
That is amazing. Like, that is just... To be fair, though, the Colts' best feature is their run defence, and the Colts don't tend to run the ball very often, so I wouldn't be surprised if Josh Allen comes out of there throwing the ball a lot and potentially slicing and dicing that Indianapolis defensive part.
And it would make the third wildcard game the Tennessee Titans against the Ravens.
I mean, they've played earlier in the season, and I'm pretty sure the Titans won.
They did, and again, I think the Ravens are, the Ravens are a phenomenal football team. There's no doubt about that. But it was also the Titans that knocked them out of the playoffs last year, so that's a really interesting match anyway.
That is an absolutely mouth-watering game, though. To be fair, it always is 4th v 5th because That's always the best team which just missed out, so you know they're going to be good. And then you've got a team which, could be good, could be bad if you're the NFC. Well, interesting one. Although, also, caveat to it, this is all assuming then that the Browns are losing to the Steelers in Week 17, yes?
I have made that assumption. I've made other assumptions.
Yeah.
I've assumed that the Dolphins are losing to the Bills, which isn't a given either.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just a prediction, I guess.
But the Titans could end up, if they don't win against, who are they playing? I forgot who they're playing. If the Titans don't win their final game of the season, the Colts are playing the Jags, so the Titans must be playing the Texans, that's right. The Titans playing the Texans. If they don't win that, and the Ravens, the Colts, and the Dolphins, although it's unlikely, as we were saying before, that the Dolphins are going to win. But if all three of those teams win, they will miss out on the playoffs.
And that would be...
Wow.
That's quite funny. To go from 4th to 8th. Yeah.
Crazy.
That is quite nuts. But yeah, so there's a whole raft of scenarios that can happen in the AFC. But the NFC is a lot more clean cut.
Apart from the Giants.
Yeah.
They're the one team that could be 4th or 13th.
Yeah, to be fair, the number 1 seed's still up for grabs, and it is a little bit complicated as to what happens, but the Packers play the Bears in the final week of the season, and even though the Bears are still in with a shout of making the wild card places, it's in their own hands. I'd be surprised if the Packers lost.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
assume the Packers are going to end up the number 1 seed. The Saints have wrapped up their division, and the Seahawks have wrapped up theirs. And then you've got the NFC East, which is just minging.
Yeah. I mean, it's impossible to predict. Of course, the caveat here is that Dallas and the Giants play one another.
Which is going to be amazing.
Yeah,
because whoever
that's
wins...
literally a playoff shootout for those two teams. It's a win or bust scenario, isn't it? And I'm just having a look at the fixtures for the NFC teams.
So the way it'll work is, because the Giants and the Cowboys play each other in the final week, the winner of that will not win instantly the NFC East. They have to depend on Washington losing later on in the day. So it's in Washington's hands still, but Washington does play the Eagles, who are already eliminated. But if Washington loses, it's the winner of the Cowboys against the Giants gets the NFC East title, which is crazy to think.
Yeah. So, on paper, it should be Washington, shouldn't it? But then, because they're playing a team who are already out of playoff contention anyway. But I do think that in the NFC East, I think we're in the kind of realm of, Philadelphia are out of the playoff contention, but they're only 2 games worse off than Washington. And it's almost that they're all kind of in that same bracket of record and quality, that it's not out of the question for Washington to lose that. But it should be Washington on paper, shouldn't it? On paper.
Well, the NFC East, those 4 teams, I don't think there's a division in the NFL where the teams hate each other more than that division there. And in particular, the Cowboys and the Eagles, the hatred between those 2 teams supersedes any hatred that the Washington football team or the Giants have for either of the other 2. The Eagles and the Cowboys hate each other the most. So if the Cowboys... I don't actually know. Because they're not even near each other geographically. There is absolutely no reason for them to... I'm sure it is written down somewhere why they hate each other so much, but I think it might be something to do with both of them sort of claiming to be America's team. I mean, I think Cowboys more have taken that name on board than the Eagles. But if the Cowboys beat the Giants and then the Washington plays the Eagles later on, I wouldn't be surprised if Philadelphia go out there and go, yeah, we're going to rest everyone today because we don't want the Cowboys to get into the playoffs, just to be spiteful to the other team. Yeah, so that could be interesting.
Okay, so my thoughts are that I think Green Bay will wrap up the number 1 seed, and I think that New Orleans will be the number 2 seed, purely because the Saints have got the Panthers as their last match, whereas the Seahawks have got the 49ers, and whilst the 49ers are out of playoff contention, I think the 49ers are still a
They're
very
a far
good team.
better team than what the Panthers are too.
So I think that it's more, and as it stands on tiebreak. So basically, to secure the number 2 seed, all the Saints have to do is match the Seahawks result. So I think it's advantage the Saints for the number 2 seed. If I were to make the assumption that it is the Washington football team that finish in the number 4 seed slot, looking down at the wild cards, Tampa Bay are secure as a wild card, and they're secure as the number 1 wild card, because even if Tampa Bay lose and the LA Rams win, on tiebreakers, Tampa Bay still finishes ahead of them. So Tampa Bay are guaranteed. That's the only guarantee actually in the NFC, is that Tampa Bay will be the number 5 seed. Behind them, the next 3. Well, we've already spoken about the Cowboys and the Giants. The 3 teams behind Tampa Bay, that's where it gets really interesting, because jumping 2 spaces down to the 7th seed, you've got the Chicago Bears, but the Chicago Bears are playing the Packers at Lambeau Field. So I see that going to the Packers. I just do, based on their record.
But the thing which goes in the Bears' favour is that the Rams play the Cardinals in the final week of the season, and they are the other 2 teams in contention. So that is going to be epic.
It is. In short, this is prediction only. I think the Packers will beat the Bears. So I think the Bears are finishing 8-8. 8-8.
Really?
Yeah, that's my prediction. I just think that the Packers will beat them.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's not, again, the Bears could produce a bit of a shock. But I think Rodgers is playing well. You know, the criticisms that have been levelled against the Packers is that, you know, they're 12-3, but they've played a lot of teams with losing records. But then, you know, the other night they convincingly come out and absolutely hammer Tennessee, who have got a pretty convincing winning record. So I think the Packers are a good team. If they beat the Bears finish 8-8, which means that the Rams no longer need to win to get a playoff.
Yeah, the Rams get it if they beat the Cardinals or the Bears lose, which is very convenient for them.
Yeah. So if the Bears were to lose to the Packers, the Rams are guaranteed the number 6 seed, whether they win or lose.
Mm-hmm.
No, they're not. Because if the Cardinals were to beat them, the Cardinals would jump both the Rams and the Bears, and the Cardinals would get the number 6 seed. So it's win or bust for the Cardinals. It's as simple as that. If the Cardinals lose, then they're not in the playoffs, I think. Yeah, it's as simple as that. Whereas the Rams, depending on how Chicago do, the Rams could possibly afford to lose. The Bears could possibly afford to lose, because if the Bears and the Cardinals lose, then the Bears get the playoff berth. So I think Arizona have got the simplest scenario, really. I think if you're trying to prepare your players for this last match, I think it's quite...
Just win and you're in.
Yeah, it's quite simple. Exactly. Win and you're in. Whereas the Bears and the Rams is that kind of... You know, obviously they want to go in and win their last matches. There's no doubt there, but it's not quite as straightforward for them. But they're in the position to get the berths at the moment. I think the Cardinals have got it in them to beat the Rams. And the that doesn't mean that I think they will. But the Rams... You know, the Rams won this weekend, didn't they? Did they win this weekend?
No, they lost to the Seahawks, which is why the Seahawks are division winners, but the Cardinals lost to the 49ers. So,
yes. But the week before, the Rams lost to the Jets, and the Rams are on a... That's right, because the Rams are on a 2-match losing streak now. And, I don't know, without again...
And Jared Goff just broke his thumb.
Has he?
Yes. So, they're probably out. well, actually, they're probably not. The Bears probably won't. They'll be the ones to miss out then, won't they? Cardinals probably win. That's my prediction. Cardinals win, Bears lose, but the Bears are going to win on the basis that... Oh no, that'll make the Rams in, won't it?
Yeah.
Oh, ignore me, yeah. Cardinals and Rams then.
Yeah, I'm tempted to say I think the most likely scenario is possibly that the Bears just miss out, just because I'm struggling to see the Bears beating Green Bay. But it's a derby match, that one, isn't it? It's the oldest rivalry in the NFL. But I think the Bears will lose to the Packers, and I can see the Cardinals beating the Rams. I'm not saying it will happen, but I can see it. And I don't know, there's something about Jared Goff, against the Jets, he just got nothing going whatsoever. And I don't know, I hadn't heard about his broken thumb. I'm guessing he wasn't playing with a broken thumb over a week ago, was he?
No, he injured it this weekend.
There we go. So, like, a fully fit Jared Goff against the 0 wins New York Jets just over a week ago, just got nothing going whatsoever. Whereas I think Kyler Murray is top quality. I think he's really, really good. And DeAndre Hopkins as well. So I think the Cardinals have got it in them to beat the Rams.
Yeah. So that'll be super interesting. So that'll put the Saints against the
Rams.
And I'll be honest, I'm probably going to say the Saints are going to win that because they are just a cut above the mustard. Would you agree?
Yeah.
That puts the... Who's third? Seahawks against the... Cardinals. That's a tough one because they have had 2 absolutely epic matches so far, and I think that one, I'd love to see the Cardinals do that.
So would I, but I don't know. I think I don't know. Hard to tell.
And then the final one would be Washington against Tampa Bay. I think everybody knows the result of that one already.
Yeah, with Brady's playoff pedigree, I think Tampa Bay win that.
So yeah, well, that's what we think about the NFC playoffs going forward. Other NFL news, I got the NFL's thinking of increasing the regular season to 17 games. I'm not sure how, but they are thinking about it. That could be interesting.
I mean, more NFL is never a bad thing, is it?
No, I just can't see how
they're going to do it
restructure that. Because at the moment it's got quite a nice formula. So unless they just say they're going to play, like when they play the other teams that finish in the same position as them in the next year in their own side, maybe they will play one of them twice. Because obviously you don't play one of them again because you're already playing them by virtue of you playing that whole division once. But maybe they just say you'll play that team twice, which could be fun. Alvin Kamara ties the Rushington but it's rushing touchdown record for a single game with 6 against the Vikings on Christmas Day. That's pretty impressive. That
is pretty impressive.
The Jaguars are the number 1 pick. We always said that, and well, they're pretty well set up for the future now because they've got 2 first-round picks this year, 2 second-round picks, over 100 million in cap space, and a total of 12 picks. And one of those first-round picks is the number 1 pick. So they are very well set up for the future, and they got some not bad players this year at the moment.
It'll be interesting to see what happens with that.
Well, whoever comes in, because they've discovered their GM, so they're gonna have another one of them. So that could go anyway.
Yeah.
Travis Kelce breaks the receiving record for a tight end. I loved that. I'm glad he got that because he had it for a really short amount of time and then lost it.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he had it for 30 minutes. And then George Kittle beat it about half hour later, and it was like, okay, that's
that's annoying.
Yeah. Tampa Bay. Oh, that was quite funny. Tampa Bay benched Tom Brady at half time, not because he's bad, but because they were 34-0 up already.
That's ridiculous,
at
isn't
the
it?
half against the Detroit Lions. So yeah, that's glorious for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I imagine, because you've got all the momentum and the rest period in one game. And finally, the Dolphins could make the playoffs. They make the playoffs, but they could also have a top 5 draft pick. Because the Texans, when they traded Laramie Tunsil to the Dolphins, or was it the other way around? No, when the Dolphins traded Laramie Tunsil, the lineman, to the Texans, they gave him their next 2 first-round picks for it. Don't know why, he's not that good. But it could mean now they're the first team since 2003 to make the playoffs and have a top 5 draft pick.
That's
very crazy.
That is pretty crazy. So a lot's happened in the NFL this week then. All very
And more to
exciting
come.
heading into crunch time playoffs. There we are. That's the NFL for this week. We will do our stats of the week to finish off, or stats of the week, I should say. Jack, do you want to?
I shall start.
Go on.
Arsenal's win at Chelsea was their first home win since October the 4th.
Wow.
And that was against, the last time they won was against bottom of the league Sheffield United. That is a run of 84 days, which is 22 98.95% of 2020.
It's almost a quarter of the year.
Almost a quarter of 2020 they went without a win. So,
wow. That's rough. And mine is also Arsenal related. Their team against Chelsea had an average age of 19.3 years, which I thought was pretty impressive statistic. Josh, do you have a stat of the week?
Yeah, I do. West Ham United have now not had any shots on target in 3 full halves of Premier League football. So their last one was Sebastian Aller's goal against Crystal Palace, which was a peach of a goal.
It was a bicey, wasn't it?
Pardon?
Or was it close to a bicey? Or something like that?
Yeah, it was a lovely finish. But that was not only their last goal, that was their last shot on target, and that is 170 minutes of play ago. So that's nearly 3 hours.
Wow.
Without a shot on target.
That's pretty rough.
Yeah.
There we are. Those are our stats of the week, and that is the end of this episode of the Down to the Wire podcast, and it's the final episode of the Down to the Wire podcast for 2020. So we are on Spotify, YouTube, Google Podcasts, Breaker. Anything else I've missed, Jack?
Apple Podcasts.
Pocket
Casts. I always forget that one, Pocket Casts.
Yeah.
Josh, thank you for joining us. Pleasure to have you.
Yeah, no,
thank you for your input.
It's a pleasure to be on. Enjoyed.
Good stuff. Right, we shall talk to you all on the next one for the first podcast of 2021. See you all soon.